Welcome everybody to the first video lecture in the Deep Web 101 course. In this video, we're going to be discussing the deep web, the dark web, and the surface web, and explore the differences and nuances between the three. So jumping into the content here, when you're talking about the deep web, you'll often see a depiction of an iceberg, and we'll be using that for these examples. And while it's not the most technical way we could put things, it is the easiest for illustration. So when you're looking at this iceberg, you'll see that top there that is actually above the sea level. And for our case here, that'll represent the surface web. The surface web, which is on the surface of the internet, is basically everything you use every day. These are things like Google, YouTube, Reddit. Anything you can access straight through a link would be considered on the surface web. Below that and below the sea level of this iceberg, we'll find the deep web. The deep web is the part of the internet that contains things that are private, like your private emails, your Dropbox accounts, your Facebook messages. Anything that has security or needs certain authentication to access would be considered part of the deep web. And you can see how that would represent the majority of the internet, because not everything is publicly accessible. In fact, most things are hidden behind some sort of security on the internet. And this last little part of the iceberg, this bottom part down here, would be considered the dark web. And it's important to note that to get to this part of the iceberg, you're going to need special tools to access it. You couldn't just access it with a computer with normal web browsers on it. And what you would find on this dark web is things that are purposefully hidden. These could be things like marketplaces, Tor sites, hidden services, anything that's hidden on purpose and not just hidden because there's security in the way. So we talked about how you need special tools, and you're probably wondering what those special tools exactly are. But before we dive into that, it's important to note that this course will be focusing on that dark web area. We don't really teach you how to find stuff on the deep web like public records or court records, which is all considered the deep web. We're going to be focusing on that hidden part, that part that actually requires those special tools to access. So taking a look at what exactly you need to access this part of the web, let's first take a look at what you need to just access the normal surface web. To do that, all you would really need is a computer and a web browser, which if you're watching this video, you most likely already have. This can be any web browser like Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, and nothing special there. But when you're accessing the deep web, it's actually the same story. Some people think this is where you would need something special, but you just need the same tools as you would use for the surface web. All you would need extra is the passwords or authentication to get into those private links on the deep web. But then we get to the dark web, which is a little bit of a different story. First, of course, you will still need a computer to access it, but instead of a normal web browser, you'll need something called the Tor web browser. On top of that, if you want to actually purchase anything on the dark web, you'll need to know how to use Bitcoin and how to purchase it anonymously. And if you want to be as secure as possible, you'll want to be familiar with the Tails operating system and be able to use and navigate that. Now, it's important again to note that this course will be focusing on those tools used to access the dark web. Even though the dark web is quite often called the deep web, technically it is the dark web, and that's what we'll be focusing on in this course and the other courses on Deep Web Academy. So now that we know what we need to access it, let's take a look at the whole internet and each of these different webs in terms of the size of the internet. So when we take a look at just a simple pie chart of representing each of these sections, you'll see that the deep web takes up the majority of the internet. The surface web still contains a lot of information, and the dark web is the smallest portion. In size comparison, the deep web actually takes up 98% of the entire internet, the surface web coming in just under 2%, and the dark web coming in closer to 0.03%. And on the screen there, you'll see some other names used for these different types of internet. The surface web can also be called the clear net or just the regular web. The deep web can also be called the dark net, the Tor network, the hidden web, or the invisible web. However, the dark net and Tor network names for those are not the most accurate and pretty much shouldn't be used when talking about the deep web specifically. And then you have the bottom area there, which is the dark web, which can also be called Tor hidden services, the dark net, the Tor network, or even the deep web. So that's kind of a brief overview of the differences between the three. Hopefully this video gave you a better understanding of what each one is, and if you didn't know already, what we'll be focusing on in this course. In the next video, we're going to be discussing a history behind the tools that are commonly used to access this deep web. And then later on, we'll go into more specifics of those tools before actually getting hands-on with accessing the deep web.